Hey, you Gooshbagz! Welcome in to the Week 6 edition of the 2021 Gooshbagz Fantasy Football League podcast. I am your host, the commissioner of the Gooshbagz Fantasy Football League. I am Jason Peck, of course. Man, what another wonderful week. Number one, unfortunately, Brandon couldn't join me today. He's got work until late tonight, and this is the only time that I can do it. So, unfortunately, I'm sorry, Brandon, we couldn't get you on this week. We'll try to get you on another week. We'll do our best, but this was a good week because got myself another dub. I'm at 500, boys. I'm coming for you. You all are going down. But unfortunately, first, we are going to start with the injuries in the NFL, and this calls for some sad music. Unfortunately, one of the biggest news of the week was Kareem Hunt, who unfortunately was supposed to be in a smash matchup this week, and he hurt his calf and is going to the IR. And one that hits close to my heart is Dawson Knox. He got his hand broken, and afterwards he threw a 2-point conversion. So, number one, what a badass. But unfortunately, he had to get surgery today on his broken hand, or yesterday. It was successful. They're hoping he might be back. They're on a bye this week, and they're hoping they might be back for the next week, potentially. And I don't think there are two things more synonymous than Julio Jones and hamstring injury. So Benai has been dealing with this struggle for the past, 3 or 4 years, I think, in this league with Julio Jones and his hamstring issues. So we'll see if that keeps him out for this week or not. But I don't think he practiced today, but it's also only Wednesday, so who knows. Also, on the verge of a breakout here, Kedarius Tony unfortunately hurt his ankle, and they said it might kind of be serious, I guess. They haven't put him on IR yet, so it's not that serious, but we'll see if he misses only a couple games or if they do eventually put him on IR. Another big running back went down this week. We found out going into the week that Antonio Gibson had a broken shin, and he played on it. He had a microfracture or something in his shin, and now he re-injured that, went out of the game, then came back into the game, and then hurt his calf. So I'm not sure what's going on with Antonio Gibson. He might be out for a while, but who knows. And then, last but not least, Paris Campbell, who actually, looked kind of good this week. He had a couple of big plays. He broke his foot, not broke his foot, but he hurt his foot, and they're thinking that might also be pretty serious. So, unfortunately, those are the big injuries. They're actually not too bad, with the exceptions of Antonio Gibson and Kareem Hunt. Those are kind of big, but other than that, the rest of the guys are not massive fantasy players as of right now. Dustin Knox was doing well, but he was going to a bye this week anyways, so and I got the dub even with him getting hurt partway through the game. So, not too bad. Now, back to the lighter news. We got the top scorer of the league this week. We got Deshaun's happy endings. Woo! Congrats, Chad. We got you for 133.94 fantasy points, and you beat out Courts for that top spot by .02. No, I'm sorry, not Courts. You beat out Benaya for that top spot with by .02 points. So that was a close one. Wait, no, I'm wrong. No. I am wrong. It was Courts. Courts was close. He was only .02 points behind you last week. So congrats. You just barely beat him for the $10, man. I'll get you that $10 here either today or tomorrow. And you will be glad. So yeah, I'm sorry guys. I'm kind of running. I didn't have time to put together a full sheet for myself today, so I'm just kind of winging it here. So let's move on to the matchups from last week. So we're going to start off with Owen Tree versus Team IR, and you guys already know what happened this week. Owen Tree beat down Team IR by 20 fantasy points. We got a big game from Jonathan Taylor. I'm so glad I traded for him over Dalvin Cook. Hopefully it stays that way, but I think the combination of Jonathan Taylor and Brandon Cooks on my team are going to add some solidity to my roster, which just barely, it just, like I was saying on previous podcasts, I just sit above the 100 mark every single game. Like, I'm somewhere between 100 and 120, and I don't go above or below that in any week as of right now. I'm hoping I'm jinxing myself for the better, and now I'm gonna jump way above 120. That's the goal, anyways. But I got the players. I just gotta put it all together, boys. So it'll happen at some point. But yeah, Jonathan Taylor was really my only big game. James Robinson put up 17.6. Tyler Bass put up a big 13 for me. But other than that, it was just kind of like not bad games. I'm sorry. In the duds category, I guess I had Michael Pittman Jr. who put up 4.8 fantasy points. So not a great game for him. I'm not sure why he... I guess T.Y. Hilton came back, but now T.Y. Hilton looks like it might not play this week. So Michael Pittman might be good to go for this week. We'll have to see. I got him in my starting lineup for next week, so we will make it happen. But on the other side of the ball, I would consider Baker Mayfield a dud this week. Also, he is hurt, but he continued to play through it. He tore his labrum in his left arm, I believe, and he's playing through it. He's planning on playing this week. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, guys. He's planning on playing this week and next week. Like, what a man. Like, I'm going to give him props for this because he was a beast. Like, playing through that, I mean, I know he didn't play well. He didn't get a lot of fantasy points, but props to Baker Mayfield for playing through this, this terrible injury. I'm sure it's painful for him. He's just got to monitor the pain. He didn't really have... I guess he had one stud. He had Khalil Herbert, who undermined my Damian Williams play because Damian Williams is out with COVID. So Khalil Herbert got 18.2 fantasy points against the Packers this week, so that was good. He actually had... Team IR had a bunch of people in the double digits, but just not enough. Like, when you're getting 12 points from your quarterback, that really doesn't help. And then his flex, Jamal Williams in the duds category with 1.4 fantasy points, so that didn't help either. And the Dolphins only putting up 3 fantasy points. So all in all, it was kind of a rough week, just because you didn't get boom games from you had most of your lineup in there, like most of your starters. Calvin Ridley was the only one that was out, and then Russell Wilson got hurt, so that was unfortunate. But yeah, so I think all in all, just unfortunate this week to get the L. Moving on to matchup number 2, we have Chubba Hubba Dubba Bubba versus Rock the Hawk. And Chubba Hubba Bubba Bubba ran away with this matchup by almost 50 points. He scored 133.92 fantasy points to Rock the Hawk's 87.78. Hey, that's a palindrome? Yes. A number palindrome. So on Chubba Hubba Dubba Bubba, we have Josh Allen putting up big numbers like every week, 28.72 fantasy points. We got Darryl Henderson who put up a massive week, 23.7 points. And everybody else just kind of did decent, except for Chase Claypool in the duds category with 2.7 fantasy points. Yeah, like I said, the Rams D put up 17 points against the Giants. That was good. I believe they had a touchdown. Probably a classic pick 6. I'm not 100% sure what the points were. I'm sorry, guys. I woke up early to play some basketball this morning, so I'm tired. But I'm gonna make my way through it. I need some whiskey, which I'm all over the place, boys. Just hang with me. By the way, if you can't see, I got a cool ice ball. I got that from my in-laws the other day. Thank you for them. And new whiskey also from them, so that's great. Trying it out. Yeah, I mean, overall, you had almost everybody scored in double digits, like I said, except for Chase. And, yeah, I mean, it's just a solid performance all in all. Just not quite enough to get the top score and your $10 for the week. Obviously, like I said, that goes to Chad. On the other side of the ball, we got Lamar Jackson in the duds category. Man, half your team was in the duds category this week, Ryo. I don't know what happened. Lamar Jackson only had 11.78 fantasy points. And I think all those points just went to the running backs. I think there were like 2 or 3 touchdowns from the running backs by Baltimore. Myles Gaskin only had 2.4 fantasy points against Jacksonville. That was kind of sad. Leonard Fournette had a big game. He had 27.7 fantasy points. And then the two Mikes, the Mike brothers in the wide receiver spot, Mike Evans and Mike Williams, both only scored 3.7 fantasy points. And we got a special showing from the Bills defense. What is that? Oh, it's a goose. So, suck it, the Bills D, even though they are usually pretty great. Tennessee put up a fight on Monday night. That was a good game to watch. But, unfortunately, that was bad for the Bills defense. Yeah, so that's that matchup. Like I said, you just got a lot of duds this week. You did get DeAndre Hopkins, who got 19 fantasy points. I'm sorry, I should have called him out earlier. He did great. So, on to matchup number 3. We got Deshaun's Happy Endings, the top scorer of the week. And ain't no wallet back, girl. This was closer. Deshaun's Happy Endings, even though he had the top score with 133.94 fantasy points, ain't no Waller Batgirl put up a good fight with 126.7 fantasy points. So, on Deshaun's Happy Endings, we got Matthew Stafford with 25 fantasy points, so that's pretty decent. CeeDee Lamb put up 31 fantasy points, 31.6 fantasy points, so that was a big week. You never know. You never quite know which piece of the Dallas offense is going to go off each week. It could be the running backs, it could be the wide receivers, it could be both, but most of the time, it's been one or the other. They've either focused on the passing game or focused on the running game. So this week it was CeeDee Lamb who went nuts, and yeah, I mean 31.6 fantasy points. It's tough to argue with that. And then Cooper Kupp rose back up to glory this week with 29.5 fantasy points. So that was great from him. He playing against the Giants this week, pretty easy defense to play against. So. Smash matchup, and Cooper Kupp definitely smashed. In the duds category, we got Devonta Smith with 4.1 fantasy points, and Graham Gano only put up 3. But, kickers and whatnot, they're kickers. So, yeah, I mean, everybody else was kind of, somewhere between 7 points and 15 points, so not too bad. You just had some smash games from the Stafford Cooper Kupp stack, so that was good for you. On the other side of the ball, we got Aaron Rodgers put up 23.7 fantasy points. That's all right. Derrick Henry had a monster game with 34.6 fantasy points, and he basically carried your team not to victory, but he scored a lot of the points from your team. Dalvin Cook also had a big game with 21.3 fantasy points, and the two of them basically scored half of your points. In the duds category, we got Terry McLaurin with 4.8 fantasy points. You were hoping for a bigger game from that Washington offense against the Kansas City defense, who really hasn't looked good this year. In fact, they've been like the worst defense against quarterbacks and against wide receivers, so this should have been a smash play, but I think Terry McLaurin came in a little bit sick or banged up or something. So he had a rough time. But all in all, your team scored pretty well, just not quite enough. So on to matchup number 4. We got, this was a barn burner. We have Ferris Bueller's You're My Hero, spelled Y-O-U-R, versus my tight end Ertz when Eifert. And this, like I said, was very close, decided by less than a point. We have Ferris Bueller, You're My Hero, won 108.98 fantasy points to 108.0. This was close, and it came down to Aaron Buck starting a defense. So, unfortunately, in the duds category, the Broncos D had less than a goose. They had -2 fantasy points, and if you just... I mean, I would like you to have a full lineup, so I'm glad you did. But had he not played a defense, he would have won. So that's really unfortunate, and sometimes that's just how the game goes. But the studs on his team, on Aaron's team, we have Adam Thielen, who put up 24.3 fantasy points. So back in the W column for Adam Thielen, he was looking a little rough here the last couple weeks. And then Jalen Hurts put up 25 fantasy points, which is decent. Not too bad. Everybody else, Tyreek Hill had 18 fantasy points. We've got the running backs only put up single digits this week. Miles Sanders was 7. Javonte Williams was 8. So not great out of them. But, everybody else played decent on your team. DK Metcalf only at 8 as well. So, yeah, just not quite enough. Just one more point would have really done it for you, unfortunately, for you. So, just like one catch for 5 yards or one rush for 10 yards. It would have been simple. Just a little out route from, from Patrick Mahomes. Although, never mind. Patrick Mahomes was on the other side of the ball. So, Patrick Mahomes, which is a bold move, playing Patrick Mahomes against his 2 biggest weapons. That is a bold move. He put up 22.98 fantasy points. Najee Harris put up 21.7 fantasy points. He's been quietly solid like this whole year. And then Aaron Jones put up 19 fantasy points against the Bears, who are now owned by Aaron Rodgers. I believe he put in a bid to purchase part of their team. He says he still owns them. So maybe he's owned them for a while, but Aaron Rodgers looked like a beast out there. And then he had a good game from Ricky Seals-Jones. I'm going to call him out because he's not a well-known name, but he put up 13.8 fantasy points this week. I believe he had a long touchdown pass or catch, so that was good for him. But yeah, those kind of 4, and then Chris Boswell, your kicker, kind of led your team to victory. In the duds category, you had Tyler Boyd with only 1.2 fantasy points, sitting there in your flex. And then Tyler Lockett with Geno Smith at the helm really isn't looking that good with 4.5 fantasy points. On to the last matchup of the week. We have Waddle Baby, Waddle Baby, Waddle Baby, Waddle versus Hot Digsity Dog. And Waddle Baby took this bad boy down. 123.36 fantasy points to Hot Digsity Dog's 112.8. So took him down by a little over. I'm sorry, guys. A little over than 10 points. Now, the studs on Waddle Baby. We have Kyler Murray with 25.76 fantasy points. That's a decent game. We didn't have any monster games from any quarterbacks this week. That's kind of the top of this week, except Dak on the other side at 26.8. So, there weren't too many monster games by quarterbacks. So, in general, it was a pretty low-scoring week. I mean, we had two teams in the 130s, two teams in the 120s, and then a few in the 1-teens. But nobody higher, which we've usually had, every week, somebody in the 40s, 50s, or 60s. So... the other studs on Waddle Baby, I guess we had Joe Mixon. It's Joe Mixon breakout season, baby. Coming back from an injury, he put up 20. Well, he didn't really go out with an injury, I don't think. He played last week, even though he was hurt. 23.8 fantasy points against Detroit. He just rolled over him. And yeah, everybody else just played decent, except for Antonio Gibson, who we mentioned earlier, is not feeling too good. So you might be strapped for some running backs coming up here. Oh no, you got Cordell Patterson who was on bye. You're all good. Psh. And you, yeah, like I said, Antonio Gibson was the only dud. Everybody else was over 10 fantasy points. Kareem Hunt only had 9.3, but at least he got in some points before he had to be taken out of the game. On Hot Diggity Dog, we have Dak Prescott, who put up 26.8 fantasy points. That's a decent week. We had Stephon Diggs with a 19.4 fantasy points. And then Antonio Brown with 19.8 fantasy points. But unfortunately, those were really the only players that played pretty well. Like Zeke put up 15.4 fantasy points. Hawk had 11, which is better than what he's been doing. And the Panthers D had a tough time with 2 fantasy points. So Nick Folk only with 3. So kind of a rough game from a few players and not quite enough from your studs to make up for it. So Waddle Baby gets up to first in the East Division, and he is 4-2. Man, that East Division is tight. I believe, let's take a look at the standings since I'm done with this. 4-2. 2 teams at 4-2, 2 teams at 3-3, and a team at 2-4. Whereas the West Division is kind of slacking, except for Ryo over there with 5-1, and then Courts is right behind him at 4-2. So, we got some tough brackets here, and I don't like these playoff percentages because it says I'm only 44% chance of getting in the playoffs. We all know that that's not right, so we'll just ignore that. Anyway, on to my favorite segment of every single week. The waiver wire team that would kick all of our asses. We got Kirk Cousins, who put up in the quarterback spot with 28.52 fantasy points. We got running back 1, Chris Evans. They call him Captain America. Had 14.2 fantasy points. In the running back 2 slot, we got Ramondre Stevenson with 13.7 fantasy points. At wide receiver 1, Donovan Peoples-Jones with 24.1 fantasy points. We got wide receiver 2, Cole Beasley, who always seems to have 1 or 2 of these great games mixed in. He had 18.3 fantasy points. We got the backup for Gronk, O.J. Howard, 13.9 fantasy points. The flex, he'd be flexing K.J. Osborne with 16.8 fantasy points. At the defensive position, we got the Cowboys, who put up 13, and kicking, making his debut in this category, Matthew Wright with 16 fantasy points. Now, overall, this team would have scored you 158.52 fantasy points. Damn, son. They took us down by over 25 fantasy points. So they are 4-2 for the year. So cheers to the waiver wire, but also additionally, all of these players are still on the waiver wire. So just pick up this team, and you can score 158 fantasy points guaranteed this week. I guarantee it. One of you go do it, and I guarantee that you'll score 158 fantasy points. So maybe Brandon, your team, anything to your team could help it out. Or somebody who's in deep trouble with buys, maybe Adam's team, I think, had quite a few people on buy. So, yeah. All right, enough of my terrible jokes. We have matchup predictions for next week, and like I said, I didn't write any of these down, so I am just looking and judging based off of that. So, first off, we have Owen Tree versus Rock the Hawk. Now, first off, it says the projected total for me is 107.6 fantasy points to Rock the Hawk's 79 fantasy points. Now, I'd like to think that that's how this matchup is going to go. However, he has a couple of people on bye, and he also has a couple of people coming back from bye. Maybe Melvin Gordon might have been on a bye this week. I'm not sure. Anyways, yeah, so he's got to fill in a couple of people. He's got Mike Williams and Jared Cook on bye this week, so he can fill those in with. Oh yeah, Alvin Kamara's coming off a bye, so Alvin Kamara will jump right back into that lineup. But he's got to fill in for Mike Evans Mike Williams and Jared Cook. So he's got Gronk, who might be coming off of being injured. That's a possibility. He could throw in DeAndre Hopkins into his other wide receiver spot and maybe put in Michael Carter or Melvin Gordon, probably. So, he's got the possibility of filling in there. He's also got to figure out his defensive position right now because the Bills are on bye. So I still have me in this matchup. I think even with he's kind of got to piece together a lineup here, and I'm not super concerned. I mean, his players kind of got some tough matchups. Lamar versus Cincinnati. I don't know if that'll be too tough, but maybe they can run all over Cincinnati. Leonard Fournette against Chicago, Mike Evans against Chicago. Chicago's D had a tough time against the running game last week, so they might have good games. We'll see. And DeAndre Hopkins is against Houston, so he may have a smash matchup. We'll see. The more I'm looking at it, the more I'm concerned that I'm going to get wrecked. But we do have Tom Brady on the other side, so I have Tom Brady throwing to Mike Evans. So Tom Brady should do well against Chicago's defense. Damian Harris is a smash matchup against the Jets. Jonathan Taylor should have a good game. We have DJ Moore against the Giants. That should be a great matchup. Brandon Cooks against Arizona. That might be a higher scoring matchup than people think. Zach Ertz on the other side of that matchup. He's in Arizona now, and he might be a smash play against Houston. We'll have to see. Sterling Shepard against Carolina. Sterling Shepard is literally the only person right now in the Giants offense that's healthy, so I think the offense basically has to run through him. And then I got Saints D versus Seahawks, who is Geno Smith and company, so I have some good feelings about that matchup. So, unfortunately, with James Robinson on the bye and Dawson Knox hurt, I kind of had to fill in a little bit, but I still think I can get this done. I pick Owen Tree. And Brandon, since he can't make it, but I did ask him to maybe make some predictions for this week, he picked Rock the Hawk to win this matchup. So now we all know that I've got the advantage on our matchup predictions because I'm going to win. So that's how it always works. That's how it always will work forever and ever. Amen. Now on to matchup number 2. We got Deshaun's Happy Endings versus Chubba Hubba Dubba Bubba. Now, this is a matchup of the two highest scoring teams from last week. We're going to see how it goes, but it looks like Deshaun's Happy Endings had to fill in a little bit for some buys this week. Who do we got on bye? He had CeeDee Lamb on a bye, Devin Singletary on a bye. So yeah, we'll have to see how that goes. He's going to have to fill in some players here. He's got Matthew Stafford or Joe Burrow versus Baltimore, or Matthew Stafford versus Detroit. I think keeping Stafford, Cooper Kupp stack in there is going to be good. DeAndre Swift versus the Rams. That might be a tough matchup. He's got Saquon Barkley back. He'll be in versus Carolina. Cooper Kupp, like I said. Then he can throw in this wide receiver 2 spot. Some Jacoby Myers maybe, or Marquez Callaway. That might be tough. And then Hunter Henry. Oh, he's got Devonta Smith here, so he could throw in Devonta Smith up there, and then either put in either Kyle Pitts or Hunter Henry in the flex, maybe 2 tight end sets here this week to fight off the buys. We'll have to see. It's looking kind of rough for Deshaun's Happy Endings this week. On the other side, we got Ryan Tannehill versus Kansas City. That should be a good matchup. Kansas City's defense, like I said, has not been great against the passing game. We got Chuba Hubbard versus the Giants. That'll be good. This Ernest Johnson versus Denver. That'll be good. We'll have to see. Actually, Denver's defense is pretty good, so we'll see how much work Ernest Johnson actually gets and how well he does. Robert Woods versus Detroit should be decent. Darnell Mooney versus Tampa Bay. Dallas Goedert, who is currently marked as out. I think he still has to test negative for COVID. He has yet to be reinstated from COVID. So we'll have to see. Once he gets 2 negative tests, he can jump back in. We got Darryl Henderson versus Detroit. That's going to be a good matchup. The Rams D versus Detroit. Man, it's looking good. He's got some good matchups this week. I'm going to have to go with Chubba Hubba Dubba Bubba for the dub on this bad boy. And Brandon agrees with me here. He's got Chubba Hubba Dubba Bubba as well in this matchup. So we still have one difference so far. So that might make all of the difference in our personal matchup. On to matchup number 3. We got Ain't No Wilder Back Girl versus my tight end Ertz when Eifert. So we got on Ain't No Wilder Back Girl, we got Aaron Rodgers versus Washington. He is going to smash there. That's going to be great. Derrick Henry versus Kansas City. I mean, it's tough to go against, Derrick Henry in general. So we got Devonta Booker versus Carolina. Terry McLaurin, who is questionable, versus Green Bay. We've got Deebo Samuel versus Indianapolis. Deebo's been good this year. Darren Waller versus Philadelphia. Darren Waller has been pedestrian this year, so we'll have to see. James Conner versus Houston. The Ravens D versus Cincinnati. And Jason Sanders versus Atlanta. He's got Dalvin Cook out this week, which is one reason why I got rid of Dalvin Cook, because I would have had the same bye for Dalvin Cook and James Robinson this week, and it would have left me desperate. And with me and where my record is right now, I couldn't have that happening. So yeah, we'll have to see how this matchup goes. Neil is projected to score 125 fantasy points, even though Dalvin Cook is not in the lineup. So he's got some good wide receivers. He's got some good, great running back. So it'll be tough to go against him this week. But on the other side, we got Jalen Hurts versus the Raiders and Miles Sanders versus the Raiders. Javonte Williams versus Cleveland. That's going to be a rough matchup. DK Metcalf versus New Orleans. That might be tough, especially with Geno Smith at quarterback. We got Tyreek Hill versus Tennessee and Travis Kelce versus Tennessee. And Adam Thielen is currently on a bye. So let's see who we can throw in for him. Marquis Brown probably versus Cincinnati. I'd probably put him in at the flex. We got the Broncos D versus Cleveland. That might be good because Case Keenum's playing and their whole offensive line is hurt. So Broncos D might be a good play. We also have Ryan Suckup versus the Chicago defense. So I think I'm going to have to go with, as much as I hate to say it, I'm going to have to go with Ain't No Waller Back Girl. He's going to rise to 3 and 4. All right. And Brandon, once again, agrees with me. I can't believe that you're just stealing all of my picks here. I say as I pick these picks after he's given me his picks. So we'll have to see how this goes. On to matchup number 4. We have the age-old rivalry of James versus Benaiah. We got Ferris Bueller, your Y-O-U-R, my hero, winky face, versus Waddle Baby, Waddle Baby, Waddle Baby, Waddle. All right, on Waddle Baby, we got Kyler Murray versus Houston. That is going to be a smash matchup, I believe. We got Joe Mixon versus Baltimore, which might be pretty tough. Cordero Patterson versus Miami might be a smash spot. But we'll see. I mean, that's usually for actual running backs running the ball. I don't know about Miami's passing defense. I'm not 100% sure how good they are. We got Devontae Adams versus Washington. That's going to be a smash. Jamar Chase versus Baltimore. We're going to have to see. Baltimore's defense is pretty good. We have Mike Gesicki versus Atlanta. That should be a good matchup. J.D. McKissick versus J.D. McKissick without Antonio Gibson versus Green Bay. That'll be good. And the Colts D versus San Francisco. That might be a tough tough defensive play, and then Matt Prater versus Houston. So, we got on the other side of this, on James's team, we got Pat Mahomes versus Tennessee. He is going to score the most points this week, I think, by far, in the quarterback position. We got Aaron Jones versus Washington. That's going to be he's got Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon in the same lineup against the Washington defense. That is a bold move if I've ever seen one. I think he's just got to make up for some he's got some tough spots here for the bye. Najee Harris and Marvin Jones and Chris Boswell are all on a bye, so he kind of has to make things work. Kenyon Drake, he could play here over A.J. Dillon, but it's tough to trust Kenyon Drake when you get 5 touches a week. So he's going with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones in the same matchup. We got Chris Godwin versus Chicago. We've got Cortland Sutton versus Cleveland. Both of those are kind of going to be tough matchups. We got Ricky Seals-Jones versus Green Bay. He looked good, and he's been filling in well for Logan Thomas while he's been hurt. Tyler Boyd versus Baltimore. I'm not sure how many points you're going to get from that. The Buccaneers D versus Chicago should be pretty good. And then Young Hoi Koo versus Miami should be a good matchup. But I think I'm going to have to go with Waddle, baby. Waddle, baby, Waddle, baby, Waddle. Because I just like your team better. You just got better, the more studs, and the breakout Joe Mixon, the breakout Kyler Murray, the breakout Cordero Patterson. Man, you got all the breakouts on your team. Yours is a team of breakouts. So maybe Cordero Patterson's a keeper for next year. So we'll have to see. But Waddle Baby, I think, is taking home this dub. Now, the last matchup of the week, and potentially the roughest. Hot Diggity Dog versus Team IR. Team IR. Now, let me just tell you where this matchup projection is right now. Projected total for Hot Diggity Dog, 102.2 fantasy points to Team IR's 66.7 fantasy points. Now, things are looking dire for Team IR, but he hasn't filled in his bye week fill-ins. So he's got Justin Jefferson on bye this week. He'll throw in Calvin Ridley for that. That should bring up his total by 15 fantasy points. Baker Mayfield is projected to be out this week, so he'll have to fill in. He'll have to find himself a new quarterback this week. So he's got a 0 for that as well. So that'll be up towards 18, 19 fantasy points for the fill-in player. He's got in the running back position Josh Jacobs against Philadelphia. He's got Khalil Herbert against Tampa Bay. That's going to be rough, man. Even if he's the only running back in town against Tampa Bay, it's going to be really rough. We got A.J. Brown versus Kansas City. That should be good. A.J. Brown should smash in that spot. I don't think 12.2 fantasy points is enough of a projection for him. We got Mark Andrews versus Cincinnati. That's been great and will continue to be great. We got Jamal Williams versus the Rams. That is rough. Then you grab the Dolphins defense for some reason versus Atlanta. Now, I'm not 100% sure how that's going to work out for you, but, that's just what you think. And then Jason Myers against New Orleans. On Hot Diggity Dog's side, we got Matt Ryan filling in for a... Now, if you guys obviously can't see this, what's right in front of me, and we've talked about it already on the chat, but Adam has 6 players on bye this week. He's got Stephon Diggs, Austin Eckler, Ezekiel Elliott, Keenan Allen, Dak Prescott. I'm sorry, the last one I counted was an empty slot on his bench. No, he's got 5 players on bye this week, and they're all starters. So he's kind of got to fill in where he can, but he's got 102. I mean, he's projected to win this thing, and he's got a great matchup. He's got Matt Ryan against Miami. That should be he's a good streamer this week. Elijah Mitchell filling in He's playing against Indianapolis this week. Darryl Williams, who had a great week last week, who against Tennessee this week, so he should be a good play. And then he's got 5 questionable players on his team as well. He's got Antonio Brown, who I think has an ankle injury. He didn't practice today. He's against Chicago. We got Allen Robinson versus Tampa Bay. That's going to be a rough one, man. TJ Hawkinson versus the Rams. That's going to be tough. Henry Ruggs against Philadelphia. Man, this is going to be, I think this is going to be a very low scoring matchup this week. I project that both teams are kind of going to score in like the 80s, maybe the 90s. I think both teams are definitely going to be under 100 fantasy points this week, so we'll have to see. But I think, man, this is tough, guys. I mean, he does have the Arizona Cardinals defense against Houston. That might be a big boost in this matchup. So I'm going to have to go. Oh, man. This is how I feel about this matchup. It just looks terrible. Yeah, I'll go with Hot Digsity Dog. And Brandon picked his own team to win, so that shouldn't be a surprise. But I'm going to go against him this week so he has a chance to prove his worth. So the 2 matchups that we didn't agree on were our own matchups. He picked Ryo against me. I'm picking Adam against him. We're going to see how it goes. But boys, we made it through. I was yawning. I got a skeleton little outline over here. It's been we made our way through. That's all I got to say. So, congratulations to me. Congratulations to the podcast for making it another week. And boys, we made it. I'm looking forward to coming out of this week at 4-3 against the top-seeded Rock the Hawk. You are going to lose. But just this week, I'm rooting against you, Ryo. Just this week. As always. So, the rest of you boys, good luck on your matchups. And we will catch you guys again next week. Deuces.